I stood in the doorway watching Kevin's brother unpack boxes in what used to be her studio. Kevin looked so much like him it hurt. Same dark eyes, same way of biting his lower lip when concentrating. He'd lost his apartment, his job, everything. I offered him a place to stay because it's what Aaron would have wanted. I didn't expect what happened next. If this story speaks to you, please like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. The first time I saw Kevin cry was 3 weeks after the funeral. I came home from the pharmacy where I work and found him sitting on the kitchen floor surrounded by Erin's cookbooks. He had one open on his lap, her handwriting filling the margins with notes about adjusting recipes for altitude or substituting ingredients. "I'm sorry," he said, wiping his face quickly. "I was looking for something to make for dinner. I wanted to do something useful." I sat down across from him on the cold tile. We'd barely spoken since he moved in. The apartment felt too small and too empty at the same time. "She always wrote in her books," I said. "Drove me crazy at first." "I'm one of those people who keeps books pristine." Kevin smiled slightly. "She did it to everything, comics, textbooks, novels. Our mom used to tell her she was vandalizing perfectly good pages." It was the first real conversation we'd had. Before that, everything had been logistics, which closet he could use, whether he needed anything from the store, the careful politeness of near strangers sharing space because grief demanded it. Kevin had been living in Sacramento working as a budget analyst for the state when everything fell apart. First the layoffs, then his roommate situation dissolved when the lease wasn't renewed. He'd called me from a hotel room asking if the offer I'd made at the funeral still stood. Of course it did. Erin would have wanted me to help her little brother. The fact that he wasn't so little anymore, that he was 32 to my 37, didn't change the obligation I felt. "I'll make something," I said, standing up. "You don't have to worry about cooking." "I want to," Kevin said. "I need to keep my hands busy." I understood that. I'd been working double shifts since Aaron died, taking every extra hour the pharmacy offered, anything to avoid coming home to the silence. Kevin made chicken piccata that night. It wasn't exactly like Aaron's, but it was close enough that I had to excuse myself halfway through the meal. I stood in the bathroom with the water running, trying to pull myself together. When I came back, Kevin had cleared the table. He didn't ask if I was okay, he just poured us both more wine. "Tell me about work," he said. "What's it like being a pharmacist?" "Mostly it's explaining to people why their insurance won't cover the medication their doctor prescribed," I said. "But sometimes I catch dangerous interactions or dosing errors. Those days feel worthwhile." "Aaron said you were good at your job, that you cared about getting it right." Hearing him say her name so casually made my chest tight. Most people had started avoiding it, like they could spare me pain by pretending she'd never existed. "She talked about me all the time." Kevin refilled his glass. "She was proud of you. The way you'd gone back to school later, worked your way through pharmacy school while she was building her massage therapy practice." Aaron had been a massage therapist with a small studio in Tempe. We'd met 6 years ago at a community garden event. She'd been volunteering to do chair massages for the organizers. I'd been there because my therapist suggested I needed to meet people, build connections outside of work. We'd married 3 years later in a small ceremony at the desert Botanical garden. Her family came, accepted me with varying degrees of warmth. Kevin had been finishing his undergraduate degree at Arizona State then. He'd seemed genuinely happy for us. "I miss her," I said, the words coming out rough. "Me too." Kevin stared into his wine. "I keep wanting to text her. I'll see something funny or annoying and reach for my phone before I remember." We sat in silence for a while. Outside, someone's car alarm went off and then stopped. The building settled around us with small creaks and groans. "I'm going to start looking for work next week," Kevin said. "I've got some savings left and I'll start contributing to rent as soon as I can." "There's no rush." "There is, though." He met my eyes. "I can't just camp out here indefinitely." "You've been generous enough letting me stay at all." The truth was, I didn't mind having him there. The apartment felt less haunted with another person in it. I didn't say that, though. It seemed like too much to put on someone who was dealing with his own losses. Kevin found a job 2 weeks later as a financial analyst for a nonprofit that worked with small businesses. It wasn't what he'd been doing in Sacramento, but it paid decently and the commute was manageable. We fell into a routine. I worked early shifts at the pharmacy. Kevin worked standard office hours. Some evenings we'd cook together. Other nights we'd order takeout and watch television without really paying attention to what was on the screen. We talked about Erin in small doses. The time she tried to fix her own car and ended up making it worse. The way she'd insist on buying the expensive coffee, but then drink it with so much cream and sugar it barely tasted like coffee anymore. Her terrible sense of direction and her stubborn refusal to use GPS. Sometimes Kevin would mention things I didn't know, stories from their childhood in Flagstaff. The year Erin had decided she wanted to be a competitive swimmer and quit after 3 weeks, the elaborate fantasy games they'd played in the backyard. She was always the hero, Kevin said one night. I had to be the sidekick or the villain. She said it was because she was older so she got to decide. That sounds like her, I said. Kevin laughed. She once made me be a dragon for an entire summer. I had to chase her around breathing pretend fire while she rescued imaginary villagers. Did you mind? No, his smile faded a little. I would have done anything she asked. She was my favorite person. The past tense landed between us like something physical. We both looked away. I started noticing small things about Kevin. The way he hummed while making coffee in the morning. How he organized the recycling with almost obsessive precision. The fact that he read poetry before bed, these slim volumes he'd brought with him from Sacramento. One Saturday in late November, I came home from errands to find him rearranging the living room. He'd moved the couch and the bookshelf, creating better flow through the space. I should have asked first, he said when he saw my expression. I'm sorry, I'll put it back. No, it's good. It's better this way. He'd also taken down some of the photos of Erin that I'd left scattered around the apartment. I felt a flash of something like anger before I realized he'd grouped them together on one shelf, creating a small tribute instead of a scattered haunting. I thought maybe it would help, Kevin said quietly, having them in one place so you can look when you want to but you're not ambushed by her face everywhere you turn. He was right. I hadn't been able to articulate why the photos bothered me, but he'd understood instinctively. Thank you, I said. Something shifted after that. We were more comfortable together, less like strangers performing politeness. Kevin started joining me on grocery runs. We discovered we both liked hiking and started going out to Papago Park on Sunday mornings. December arrived with unseasonably cool weather. Phoenix didn't get a real winter, but the temperatures dropped enough that I pulled out sweaters I rarely wore. Kevin mentioned he'd be spending Christmas with his parents in Flagstaff. I was invited, of course, but we both knew I wouldn't go. Erin's parents had been cordial to me, but their acceptance had always felt conditional. Without her there as a buffer, I couldn't imagine sitting through a holiday meal with them. What will you do? Kevin asked. Work, I said. I usually pick up shifts on holidays. Time and a half, and it gives the parents on staff a chance to be with their kids. That's charitable of you. It's practical, I said. The pharmacy doesn't close just because it's Christmas. Kevin left on Christmas Eve. The apartment felt cavernous without him. I worked a 12-hour shift on Christmas Day, came home to leftover Thai food, and went to bed early. He texted me around 9 that night. Mom made her green chili stew. Wish you were here to suffer through it with me. I smiled at my phone. Is it still terrible? Worse than I remembered. She's added new ingredients. I think one of them might be cinnamon. That's a crime against food. Tell me about it. She's added new ingredients. I think one of them might be cinnamon. Tell me about it. How was work? We texted back and forth for an hour. It was the most relaxed I'd felt all day. Kevin came back 2 days later looking exhausted. He dropped his bag by the door and collapsed on the couch. That bad? I asked. My dad spent the entire time asking when I was going to get a real job and move back to Flagstaff. My mom cried every time someone mentioned Aaron. My aunt brought her new boyfriend who wouldn't stop talking about his cryptocurrency investments. I sat down next to him. Sounds excruciating. The worst part was everyone acting like I should be over it already, like 3 months is enough time to stop grieving. People are uncomfortable with grief, I said. They want you to package it up neatly so they don't have to feel awkward. Kevin turned his head to look at me. You get it? Yeah, I said. I do. We ordered pizza and watched a documentary about deep-sea creatures. Kevin fell asleep halfway through, his head tipping onto my shoulder. I stayed still, not wanting to wake him. When I finally did move, he stirred and mumbled an apology. It's fine, I said. You should get some real sleep. Your neck is going to hate you if you spend the night on the couch. He stood up slowly, stretching. Thanks, Hollies. It was the first time he'd used my name in weeks. We'd fallen into a pattern of not using names at all, just talking to each other without preamble. Hearing him say it made me aware of how close we were standing. I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the same eyes Aaron had. I stepped back. Good night. Night, he said, but he didn't move right away. The moment stretched out, filled with something I couldn't name. Then Kevin turned and went to his room, and I stood alone in the living room wondering what had just happened. I started noticing Kevin more after that, the shape of his hands when he gestured while talking, the low rumble of his laugh. The way he'd absently touch the back of his neck when he was thinking through something complicated. I felt guilty for noticing. This was Aaron's brother. I was supposed to be helping him get back on his feet, not cataloging the curve of his jaw, but the noticing didn't stop. If anything, it intensified. New Year's Eve arrived. Neither of us had plans. Kevin suggested we watch the Phoenix celebration on television and make fun of the performances. We drank champagne that was too sweet and ate fancy cheese I'd impulse bought at the store. When midnight came, we clinked glasses and wished each other a better year. To new beginnings, Kevin said. To getting through, I countered. We both drank. Kevin set his glass down and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did Aaron ever talk to you about me? I mean, really talk. Not just the sibling stories. I thought back through years of conversations. She said you were brilliant with numbers. That you could have done anything, but you chose nonprofit work because you wanted to feel like you were helping people. What else? There was weight to the question. I tried to figure out what he was really asking. She said you'd had a hard time in college, that you'd struggled with some personal stuff but came through it stronger. Kevin nodded slowly. Did she tell you what the personal stuff was? No, I said. She respected your privacy. I came out when I was 23, Kevin said. Told my parents I was gay. They didn't take it well. Aaron was the only one who stood by me without hesitation. My heart kicked against my ribs. I didn't know. She wouldn't have told you. Like you said, she respected privacy. Kevin picked up his glass again but didn't drink. I'm only telling you now because I think you should know we're living together. It seems relevant. It doesn't change anything, I said. Doesn't it? Kevin's eyes met mine and there was a challenge in them. I didn't know how to answer that. January in Phoenix was mild and bright. I kept going to work, kept coming home, kept existing in the space between grief and whatever came after. Kevin and I didn't talk about his revelation. We went back to our routine like the conversation had never happened, but something had shifted. There was an awareness now, a current running underneath our interactions. I caught myself watching him more, the efficient way he moved through the kitchen, the concentration on his face when he was reading, the rare, full smile that transformed his whole expression. I started staying late at work, picking up extra inventory shifts that didn't need doing, anything to avoid the growing tension in the apartment. One Wednesday evening in mid-January, Kevin was waiting when I got home at 8:30. You've been avoiding me, he said without preamble. I've been busy at work, don't lie. His voice was quiet but firm. If this is about what I told you on New Year's, I can find somewhere else to stay. No, the word came out sharper than I intended. That's not what I want. Then what do you want? I set my bag down carefully, buying time. I don't know how to answer that. Kevin stood up from the couch. I think you do. I think we both do, and it's terrifying. My pulse hammered in my throat. Kevin, I'm not imagining this, he said, the way you look at me sometimes. The way I look at you? Your sister, I managed. Aaron, I know. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Believe me, I know. I've been trying to talk myself out of this for weeks. But it's not working. I wanted to move, to create distance, but I stayed frozen. This can't happen. Why not? Because you're grieving, because I'm grieving. Because you're her brother and I was her husband, and this is completely wrong. Is it? Kevin took a step closer. Or is it just complicated? There's a difference? I think so. Another step. I think sometimes things are messy and hard and still right. I shook my head. I loved her. I still love her. I know you do, so do I. Kevin's voice was steady. That doesn't erase this. What is this exactly? I don't know yet. He was close enough now that I could see his chest rising and falling with careful breaths. But I'd like the chance to find out. I can't, I said, even as every part of me wanted to close the remaining distance between us. Okay, Kevin stepped back, giving me space. I'm not going to push, but I need you to stop hiding. If you want me to move out, tell me. If you want me to stay, tell me that too. But don't just disappear on me. I want you to stay, I said quietly, then stay present. That's all I'm asking. He went to his room, leaving me standing in the living room trying to remember how to breathe normally. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the conversation, the look in Kevin's eyes, the terrible hope that had sparked in my chest when he said he felt it too. By morning, I'd convinced myself to set boundaries. We'd go back to being roommates, nothing more. I'd stop noticing him. He'd stop looking at me like that. We'd get through this until he could afford his own place. But when I came out of my bedroom, Kevin was making coffee and the morning light was catching in his hair, and all my resolve crumbled. Morning, he said, like the previous night hadn't happened. Morning. We moved around each other carefully, maintaining physical distance. It felt like we were both holding our breath. Work was a relief. I could focus on prescriptions and insurance calls and patient questions, problems with clear solutions. When I got home that evening, Kevin had made dinner, pasta with vegetables and garlic bread. Peace offering, he said. I shouldn't have pushed last night. You weren't wrong, though. I sat down at the table. I was hiding. Can we just be honest with each other? No more avoiding? I can try. We ate in careful silence for a few minutes. Then Kevin said, tell me something about you, something Aaron didn't know. The request surprised me. Why? Because I want to know you as a person, not just as my sister's husband. I thought about it while chewing. I almost didn't go to pharmacy school. I'd gotten accepted, but I was terrified of the debt, the time commitment. Aaron convinced me I could do it. What were you doing before? Working retail at a health food store. I was 28 and completely directionless. I took a sip of water. Aaron saw something in me I didn't see in myself. She was good at that, Kevin said. Seeing people's potential. What about you? Something I don't know, Kevin considered. I write poetry, bad poetry probably, but I've been doing it since high school. I have notebooks full of it. The books you read before bed, those are the good poets. I read them hoping something will rub off on my work. I'd like to read your poems sometime, I said. They're pretty personal. That's okay, only if you want to share. Kevin smiled slightly. Maybe someday. We started talking more after that. Real conversations that went beyond surface pleasantries. Kevin told me about the boyfriend he'd had in Sacramento, how the relationship had ended badly a few months before the layoffs. I told him about my family in Mesa, how we drifted apart over the years until we barely spoke. Do they know about Aaron? Kevin asked. I called my mom when it happened. She sent flowers to the funeral. That was the extent of it. I'm sorry, it's been that way for a long time, we just don't connect. Kevin reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. The contact sent electricity up my arm. He pulled back quickly. Sorry, don't be. We looked at each other and the air between us felt heavy with possibility. I stood up abruptly. I should clean up? I'll help. We washed dishes side by side, not talking, hyper-aware of every accidental brush of arms or hands. When we finished, Kevin said goodnight and went to his room. I stayed in the kitchen, gripping the counter and trying to sort through the tangle of guilt and desire and grief. The next few weeks passed in a strange tension. We were closer than before, but careful not to cross any lines. We'd have long conversations over dinner, then retreat to separate spaces. We'd sit on the couch watching movies, maintaining a deliberate gap between us. February arrived. Valentine's Day loomed, grotesque in its timing. "Wanna have an anti-Valentine's dinner?" Kevin suggested. "We can order the greasiest food we can find and watch horror movies." "That sounds perfect." We ended up with burgers and fries from a place that definitely didn't care about heart health. Kevin had queued up a zombie movie from the 80s. Halfway through, during a particularly ridiculous scene, we both started laughing. Real laughter, the kind that shook your whole body. It was the first time I'd laughed like that since Aaron died. When we caught our breath, Kevin was looking at me with such open affection that I had to look away. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." "It's just good to hear you laugh." "You too." The movie continued, but I couldn't focus. I was too aware of Kevin next to me, close but not touching. When it ended, Kevin stretched and yawned. "I should probably head to bed." "Yeah," but neither of us moved. "Hollies," Kevin said quietly. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "If things were different, if Aaron were still alive, would you ever have noticed me?" The question was so unexpected I didn't have a prepared answer. I thought about the few times I'd seen Kevin before Aaron died. Family dinners, the wedding, a visit to Sacramento where we'd all gone to some museum. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. You were always interesting to talk to, but you wouldn't have acted on it." "No," I said, "never, because you loved her." "Because I loved her," I confirmed. "And I wouldn't have betrayed that." Kevin nodded. "I need you to know I would never have done anything either, not while she was alive. She was my sister. That meant everything to me." "I know." We sat in the confession of it. The apartment was quiet except for the ambient noise of the building settling. "I think I'm falling for you," Kevin said. "I've tried not to, but I am." My heart was racing. "Kevin, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." He stood up, and this time he did go to his room, leaving me alone with the weight of his words. I didn't sleep again. I stared at the ceiling and thought about Erin. The way she'd laugh at terrible puns, her determination to make the world softer through her work, the plans we'd made that would never happen now. I thought about the grief counselor I'd seen a few times after the funeral. She'd said something about how love doesn't end when someone dies, it just changes shape. That finding new love didn't erase the old, but this wasn't new love with a stranger. This was Kevin, Aaron's brother. Would she have understood? Would she have been hurt? I'd never know. That was the terrible truth of it. She was gone, and I had to figure out how to live without her input. By morning, I'd made a decision. I got up, showered, and waited for Kevin to emerge from his room. When he did, I was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee already made. "We need to talk," I said. Kevin's face was guarded. "Okay, I've been thinking about what you said, about what's been happening between us. And I think we need to be really careful, not because I don't have feelings, I do. But because we're both still processing loss and I don't want either of us to do something we'll regret." Kevin sat down across from me. "What are you suggesting?" "That we slow down. That we be intentional about this instead of just letting it happen." "I can do that." "I need to know you're sure," I said. "That this isn't just grief or loneliness or proximity." "How will I know that?" "Time," I said, "and honesty. If we're going to even consider this, we have to be completely honest with each other." "Okay," Kevin said. "Then honestly, I've been attracted to you since before Aaron died. I saw you two at that family dinner last year, and I remember thinking you were beautiful. I felt guilty about it then. I feel guilty about it now. But it doesn't change the fact that it's true." The admission hung between us. I made myself hold his gaze. "Honestly," I said, "I noticed you too, not in a way I would have acted on, but I noticed. And since you've been living here, it's gotten harder to ignore. So what do? We take it slow, we keep talking. We don't rush into anything physical until we're both sure this is what we want." Kevin reached across the table, palm up. After a moment, I placed my hand in his. "I can work with that," he said. We started dating in a way, not publicly, not obviously, but between ourselves. We'd have intentional conversations about what we were feeling. We went on actual dates, dinner at restaurants, walks in the park, a concert downtown. We told ourselves we were just exploring the possibility, testing whether this connection was real or just a byproduct of shared grief. But the more time we spent together, the clearer it became. This was real. Kevin would tell me about his day, and I'd find myself genuinely invested in the office politics at his nonprofit. I'd complain about insurance companies, and he'd offer perspectives that made me think differently about the problem. We learned each other's rhythms. Kevin was a morning person, energetic and talkative before 9. I was slower to wake, needing coffee and silence before I could handle conversation. We adjusted, giving each other space and coming together when we were both ready. One evening in early March, we were cooking together. Kevin was chopping vegetables while I handled the stove. He said something funny and I laughed, and when I turned to respond, he was right there. We were close enough to kiss. The thought was written clearly on both our faces. "Not yet," I said quietly. "When? Soon, I think soon." Kevin nodded and stepped back, but he was smiling. 2 weeks later, we were on the couch. We'd been watching something neither of us cared about. Kevin's hand was resting near mine on the cushion between us. I turned to look at him. "I'm ready for this." I leaned in slowly, giving him every chance to pull away. He didn't. When our lips met, it felt like something clicking into place. The kiss was gentle, tentative, full of question marks. When we pulled apart, Kevin's eyes were bright. "Okay?" I asked. "More than okay." We kissed again, longer this time. My hand found the back of his neck. His fingers tangled in my hair. When we finally stopped, we stayed close, foreheads touching. "I should tell you something," Kevin said. "What?" "I think I love you." The words should have terrified me. Instead, they felt like relief. "I think I love you too," I said. We sat together in the truth of it. Outside, Phoenix went about its evening. Inside, something new was beginning. Falling in love with Kevin was different from falling in love with Erin. With her, it had been explosive and immediate. We'd known within weeks that we wanted to build a life together. With Kevin, it was steadier, more deliberate. We were both coming into this with wounds, and we treated each other carefully. But careful didn't mean tentative. Once we'd acknowledged what we felt, we stopped holding back. Kevin moved his things into my room in late March. It felt significant, even though he'd only been down the hall. Now we woke up together, fell asleep together, existed in the same space without pretense. The physical relationship developed naturally. We were both cautious, checking in constantly, making sure every step forward was mutual. "Is this okay?" became a refrain. Neither of us wanted to rush. Neither of us wanted to look back and feel like we'd betrayed Erin's memory. But slowly we built something that was ours. Inside jokes, shared routines, a rhythm that felt sustainable. April brought Kevin's birthday. He turned 33 on a Tuesday. I took the day off work and we drove out to Sedona. The red rocks were stunning against the blue sky. We hiked Cathedral Rock, taking our time on the steep sections. At the top, we sat on the warm stone and looked out at the landscape. "This is the best birthday I've had in years," Kevin said. Yeah, he leaned against me. "Thank you. For what?" "For giving this a chance, for not running when it got complicated." I kissed the top of his head. "I'm glad I didn't run." We drove back to Phoenix as the sun was setting, the rocks glowing orange and pink in the fading light. That night, I gave Kevin a leather-bound journal for his poetry and a first edition of a Mary Oliver collection he'd mentioned wanting. "This is too much," he said, holding the book carefully. "It's your birthday, I'm allowed to spoil you." Kevin set the book down and pulled me close. I love you too." We were getting used to saying it. The words came easier each time. By May, we'd been together, officially together, for 2 months, longer if you counted the complicated weeks before that. I started thinking about telling people, not Kevin's parents, not yet. But maybe some friends, my coworkers. Kevin was hesitant. "Are you sure you're ready for those conversations?" "I don't know if I'll ever feel ready, but I'm tired of hiding." "We're not hiding. We're being private." "It feels like hiding," I said. We were in the kitchen. Kevin was making his coffee with the precise measurements he preferred. I was leaning against the counter drinking mine black. What would you tell people? Kevin asked. How would you explain us? The truth, that we met through Erin, that after she died we got close. That we fell in love. They'll judge, probably, I admitted, but I can't control that. Kevin was quiet for a moment, then he said, okay. If you want to tell people, we'll tell people. I started with my supervisor at the pharmacy, a woman named Francesca who'd been kind during the worst of my grief. I asked if we could talk privately and she led me to the break room. Is everything okay? She asked. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I'm seeing someone. It's new, but it's serious and I thought you should know, Francesca smiled. That's wonderful, Hollies, I'm happy for you. It's Erin's brother, I said, watching her face. Her expression flickered with surprise but settled quickly into something neutral. Oh, I know it's complicated. It's your life, Francesca said carefully. If you're happy, that's what matters. It wasn't exactly enthusiastic support, but it wasn't condemnation either. I'd take it. I told a few other coworkers over the next week. Most reactions were similar: initial surprise, then polite acceptance. One guy, Travis, was less tactful. Man, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Dating your dead wife's brother? It's unconventional, I said evenly. But it works for us, Travis shrugged. As long as you're both adults, I guess, I let it go. There was no point in engaging, Kevin told his boss and a few colleagues at the nonprofit. They were more uniformly supportive, though Kevin suspected that was partly because they didn't know the full context. I didn't mention Erin, he said. Just that I was seeing someone. That's fine, you don't owe them your whole story. The real test would be telling Kevin's parents. We both knew that conversation was coming, but neither of us was ready to initiate it. In early June, Kevin's mom called him. She did every few weeks, checking in with a mix of concern and criticism. Kevin usually took the calls in his room, our room, and I'd give him privacy. This time I heard his voice rise, not quite yelling but sharp with frustration. When he emerged 20 minutes later, he looked drained. What happened? I asked. She wants me to come to Flagstaff for Father's Day, spend the weekend. She kept saying I'm isolating myself in Phoenix, that I need to be around family. Are you going to go? No, Kevin sat down next to me. I told her I had plans. She asked what plans. I said I was spending the weekend with someone I'm dating. My stomach tightened. What did she say? She was thrilled, started asking questions. I deflected, but she's going to keep pushing. Kevin rubbed his face. I think we need to tell them soon. Before they find out some other way. Do you want to do it in person or over the phone? Phone, Kevin said immediately. I don't want to be trapped in Flagstaff when they react. We set a date. The following Saturday, we'd call his parents together and tell them. The week leading up to it was tense. Kevin was quieter than usual, withdrawn into himself. I tried to give him space while also being available. Friday night, the night before the call, Kevin couldn't sleep. I found him in the living room at 2 in the morning, sitting in the dark. Hey, I said softly, you okay? I keep thinking about what Erin would say if she'd be okay with this. I sat down next to him. I think about that too. What conclusion have you come to? I think she'd want us both to be happy. I think she'd struggle with it being each other, but ultimately she'd want us to be happy. Kevin leaned his head on my shoulder. I hope you're right. Me too. Saturday afternoon arrived too quickly. We sat on the couch with Kevin's phone between us on speaker. His mom answered on the third ring. Kevin, sweetie, hi. Your dad's here too. We're so glad you called. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Hello, son. His father's gruff voice came through. Kevin took a breath. I have something to tell you both. Hollies is here with me. There was a pause. Then his mom said, oh, hello, Hollies. Hi, Margaret. Hi, Ron. We wanted to tell you together, Kevin continued, because it involves both of us. We're in a relationship. Hollies and I are together. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, Ron spoke. What do you mean together? We're dating. We've been dating for a few months. We're in love? That's not possible, Margaret said, her voice thin. Hollies was married to Erin. I said, and I loved her. But she's gone, and Kevin and I have found something meaningful together. This is inappropriate, Ron said, anger edging his words. Erin hasn't even been gone a year. We know how it looks, Kevin said, but we're not trying to replace her or dishonor her memory. This just happened. Things don't just happen, Margaret said. You make choices, and this is a terrible choice. Kevin's hand found mine, gripping tight. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm not apologizing for being with Holly's. You're our son, Ron said. We want what's best for you, this can't be it. It is, though, he makes me happy. Happier than I've been in a long time. What would Erin think? Margaret asked, and there were tears in her voice now. I think she'd understand, Kevin said, though his own voice was shaking. I think she'd want us both to heal and move forward. Not like this. Ron's voice was flat. This is wrong, Kevin. You need to end it. I'm not going to do that. Then we have nothing more to say to each other. The line went dead. Kevin stared at the phone, then he set it down very carefully and stood up. He walked to the bedroom and closed the door. I sat alone in the living room, my heart hammering. That had gone even worse than I'd feared. After a few minutes, I went to the bedroom door and knocked softly. Kevin? No answer. I'm coming in. I opened the door to find Kevin sitting on the edge of the bed, face in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. I sat next to him and pulled him close. He turned into me and cried these deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they were tearing him apart. I held him and didn't say anything. What was there to say? Eventually, the crying subsided. Kevin pulled back, wiping his face. I knew they'd react badly, he said. But hearing my dad say we have nothing more to say to each other, that hurt. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. It's not yours either. Kevin gave a hollow laugh. They disagree? We lay down together, still dressed, and stayed there as the afternoon faded into evening. Neither of us had the energy to do anything else. Around 8, Kevin's phone buzzed. A text from his mom. Your father is very upset. We need time to process this. Please don't contact us until we reach out. Kevin showed me the message. That's it then. They've cut me off. They might come around eventually. Maybe. He didn't sound convinced. Over the next few weeks, Kevin went through stages of grief over his parents' rejection, anger, sadness. Resignation? I tried to support him however I could. Some days that meant giving him space. Other days it meant holding him while he cried. In late June, we got a letter. Actual physical mail addressed to both of us. Kevin's hands shook as he opened it. It was from Erin's parents. A single page handwritten by Margaret. Dear Kevin and Holly's, Kevin read aloud. We have been praying about your situation. We do not understand it and we cannot say we approve. But Kevin, you are our son and we love you. We are not ready to see you or discuss this further. But we did not want you to think you are completely cut off. We hope that with time we can find a way forward. Love, Mom and Dad. It wasn't acceptance, but it was something. Kevin folded the letter carefully. They didn't disown me. No, they didn't. It was a small relief in a complicated situation. We took it. Over the next few months, Kevin rebuilt his relationship with his parents slowly. Phone calls became regular. His father even joined a few, though he was less talkative than Margaret. By Christmas, they invited both of us to Flagstaff. You don't have to go, Kevin said. I know it would be uncomfortable. I want to go, I said. If you want me there, I do. We drove to Flagstaff on Christmas Eve. The house was decorated exactly as I remembered from the one Christmas I'd spent there with Erin. It was bittersweet seeing the familiar decorations without her. Margaret greeted us at the door. She hugged Kevin, then hesitated before hugging me too. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for having me. Ron was less warm, but he shook my hand and offered me a beer. Progress. The evening was stilted but not terrible. We ate dinner, exchanged gifts. Kevin's aunt and her boyfriend weren't there this year, so it was just the four of us. At one point, Margaret brought out photo albums, pictures of Erin and Kevin as kids. Erin missing her front teeth, Kevin with a terrible bowl cut. She was a beautiful child, Margaret said, touching a photo of Erin at maybe 7 years old. She was, I agreed. I miss her every day. So do I. Margaret looked at me, really looked at me. I believe you do, and I believe you loved her. I do. Kevin says you make him happy. I hope so. He makes me happy too, she nodded slowly. That's something at least. It wasn't acceptance exactly, but it was acknowledgement. We were building bridges, however fragile. We drove back to Phoenix on Christmas Day. Kevin was quiet for most of the drive. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just processing." "That was hard, but it was good too. Your mom is trying." "She is." Kevin reached over and took my hand. "Thank you for being there, always." The new year arrived. We'd been together for almost 9 months. It was also coming up on a year since Erin died. The anniversary of her death was in late January. Kevin and I talked about how to mark it. "I think we should visit her grave," Kevin said, "together." "Okay." We went on the actual anniversary, a gray Saturday morning. The cemetery was quiet. We stood in front of Erin's headstone, reading the dates that marked a life too short. Kevin placed flowers, bright Gerbera daisies, her favorite. I stood with my hand on his shoulder. "I miss you," Kevin said to the stone. "I wish you were here. I wish you could have met Holly's the way I have. I think you'd understand why I love him." I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry I didn't save you." "I know that's not rational, but I wish I'd done something different that day." Erin had died in a car accident. A truck had run a red light and hit her driver's side. "She died instantly," the doctor said. Nothing anyone could have done, but guilt wasn't rational. We stood there for a while, each lost in our own grief. Then Kevin took my hand and we walked back to the car. "Do you think she'd forgive us?" Kevin asked as we drove away. "I think she already has," I said. "I think wherever she is, she wants us to be happy." "I hope you're right." "Me too." We went home and spent the rest of the day quietly. It felt right to honor Erin's memory without letting it consume us. February brought conversations about the future again, more concrete this time. "I want to marry you," Kevin said one evening. "Not right now, but eventually. Is that something you'd want?" We were cooking dinner together, the mundane intimacy we'd built over months. "Yes," I said, "I'd want that." "You're sure?" "I know you were married before. If it feels wrong to do it again." "It doesn't feel wrong, it feels right." Kevin smiled, the full bright smile that still made my heart skip. "Okay." "Good, are we engaged now?" "Not officially, I want to do it properly." "Get a ring, plan something meaningful." "I look forward to it." Kevin proposed in March on a hiking trip to the Superstition Mountains. We'd reached a viewpoint overlooking the desert, the landscape vast and beautiful. He got down on one knee on the dusty trail and pulled out a simple silver band. "Holly's gardener, will you marry me?" "Yes," I said, pulling him up and kissing him. "Absolutely yes." We were both crying and laughing. Another hiker passed by and congratulated us. It was perfect. We decided on a small wedding in the fall, just close friends and family. My parents were supportive. Kevin's parents were still complicated but said they'd come. We spent the spring and summer planning. Where to have it, we settled on a botanical garden. Who to invite, what to wear. It felt different from my wedding with Erin. That had been full of nervous excitement, the thrill of the unknown. This was calmer. We knew each other deeply now. We were choosing each other with full awareness of what that meant. The wedding was in October, a year and a half after Kevin first moved in. The weather was perfect, warm but not hot. My mother cried during the ceremony. Kevin's mother did too. His father stayed stoic but clapped when we kissed. At the reception, one of Kevin's coworkers asked how we met. Kevin looked at me, checking if I was okay with him telling the truth. I nodded. "Through my sister," Kevin said. "She was married to Holly's. After she passed, we found our way to each other." The coworker looked momentarily confused, then smiled. "That's beautiful." "In a complicated way?" "Yeah," I said, "it is." We danced together as people watched, some with approval, some with curiosity, maybe some with judgment. I didn't care anymore. I had Kevin and he had me. We'd built this despite the complications, despite the grief, despite everything. That night in our hotel room, Kevin said, "I wish Erin could have been here." "Me too." "Do you think she would have been happy for us?" I thought about Erin, her generosity. Her belief that love was expansive, not limited. I think she would have struggled with it at first, but ultimately, yes. I think she would have wanted us both to be loved. "I choose to believe that," Kevin said. "So do I." We'd never know for certain. That was something we'd had to accept. But we could choose to honor her memory by living fully, by loving without apology. We fell asleep tangled together, the beginning of our married life stretching out before us. It wouldn't always be easy, people would always have opinions. Kevin's parents would probably always be a bit uncomfortable with us, but we had each other. We had a love built on honesty and intention, we had a future we'd chosen deliberately, and that was enough, more than enough, it was everything.